Well, hello traders and investors. I'm LA Little and this is your daily NeoTA wrap, where we take a look at these markets and we're doing it from a neoclassical perspective. And that means each time we look at the markets and ask ourselves, what happened today? What does it tell us about the coming ones? I do this show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday. It's broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time. It's archived on YouTube. It's under the channel LA Little. If you want to subscribe, reach up in the right-hand corner, do so. Tell a friend. Tell them what we do. If you've watched me long enough, you see me call these markets day in, day out. You see that over and over, we take what the market tells us and we use that information to make wise decisions about what's coming up. You can't do it much better than what we're doing it here. And if you like what you see, of course, come over, get started, get the trades that I'm giving members. But tell a friend, let them see what we're doing as well. If you care about somebody and you want to help them out, by all means do so. As far as what happened today, markets ended up on the downside. Nothing big, except for you go to the NDX, you were down almost well over 0.75%. So Russell not too bad on the downside, but the Russell actually did a failure tonight. We'll look at that. But it looks to me like, the setup here now is to try to go back down the other way. DAX down slightly, Nikkei down slightly tonight. Europe was down last night overall, just slightly, right? Kind of a rollover, and we'll look at their charts. Asia just can't get going. Asia's in trouble, has been in trouble. China comes out, says that they're going to essentially, ease again, basically, by changing the lending, the amount of money you got to hold on reserves. But I don't know that they can kickstart this thing in any big way. Bonds up, dollar was higher today, not that much, 0.20. Gold up again big, $15 today, up after hours as well. Let's look at the charts. And we're going to start here tonight with the Russell 2000. Now, for a couple of years, a good year and a half, the Russell had been probably the best indicator overall. And tonight it does a test failure of a swing point high. Now that doesn't mean that, lights out, everything's going to fail from here and we're going straight down. But it is a test failure. You get over it, you get back underneath it. Volume was slightly higher, just barely. And so you could come back and test it, but you may get some sort of a pullback off of it first because you tried to get over the swing point high. You don't have the volume on the test. Right? I mean, the test volume is actually higher than here. Over here we had 432. We're pushing about 436. Prior day was about 434. So you actually have a little bit more volume, but you're not pushing a lot more. So what does that tell you? It tells you the buyer's unwilling to buy, right? Unwilling to pay up for a higher and higher price. Usually you get some sort of a setback off of that. That's the Russell. That's the cleanest shot today. If you actually pull the weekly over and look at the weekly, right, you kind of got the same thing going on over there. Let's look at the NDX. So the NDX came off the hardest today. That's sort of a rollover coming back in. NDX couldn't even get to that swing point high. Big cap technology just not being bought, right? So you got a failure there to even get to the high. And if we move over to the S&P 500, S&P 500, the test here right now is this bullish retest regenerate. So if you remember, we were doing a bearish retest regenerate to start with on the other indexes. We push up on the NASDAQ, the NDX, we get over it, same thing on the Russell. Here we'd already gotten over a swing point high, whereas elsewhere we couldn't. And what do? As soon as we do it, we start falling back in to do an immediate retest in an attempt to regenerate in the direction of the break. Immediate retest do not have that high a probability compared to a delayed retest. And so probabilities, yeah, they still favor a regenerate in general, but it doesn't, it's certainly not a high probability event. And so this could push back down. So we've got retest regenerate on S&P 500. We got a test failure, not on volume, but on price on the Russell 2000. And we have the NDX and the NASDAQ that could not even get to that price point, right? The swing point high. What do we have elsewhere? Well, if we go overseas, pull up the DAX. The DAX, if you remember now, the DAX had gotten over, let's draw this back out again. DAX had gotten over the bearish retest regenerate, then pulled back inside of it, right, down in this area. Then it pushes back up one more time, right, to get back over it. And now we're back in it again. And so the DAX is really struggling with that swing point low in an attempt to get higher, and so far hasn't been able to do it. And that's with the euro being weaker, not stronger, which is kind of an indication of just how weak the DAX in general is. If we look at the CAX, CAX is over it. CAX is still hanging up there at the highs, so there's nothing wrong with that one. And if we go over and take a look at Switzerland, right, Switzerland itself can't get back up to that high. So in general, European markets still struggling with these price points. Nothing like Asia, though. Asia cannot find itself. Asia, you know, if you take and look, and I'm going to pull over, and I'm looking at the Hong Kong market is just totally beat up. And they can't even lift back towards that swing point low, just stuck in the mud, so to speak. And that's even with the announcement in Shanghai that they're going to make credit situation a little bit easier and try to push more money out to borrowers. So Asia definitely struggling. And as I was saying, you know, Europe unable to push higher even though the euro is depreciating. That, you know, the DAX, for example, this is telling you something, right? If you got a depreciation currency and you can't even turn your markets around with that, I'm not sure what to think about it. And if we go over and look at Japan, remember Japan had failed at the highs. They did bump up last night, but Japan itself can't get going. And on top of all of that, right, we've got gold already having moved on fear of a market meltdown. Gold not backing off, even though it should be range trading here. And even though it is range trading, you know, it's certainly not backing up in any big way. And then finally, if you look at oil still hanging there trying to push higher. If we were looking at the West Texas Intermediate, it's up here testing this swing point high still on the West Texas Intermediate. You don't get a good representation from the USO. And then finally, if I move over to the dollar easily gets back over, even though it has a dark candle by the end of the day, gets back over this bearish retest regenerate zone, right? Definitely over it at this point, over the breakdown bar. Dollar wants to push higher. It's going to make euro cheaper, but yet that's not helping the equity markets, which is what we should see happening at this particular point in time. And I want to point out one more thing. Since it's the end of the month, there's actually some longer term tails that are coming in here. And that is, for example, if we look at the XLF, you got a break of a swing point low on a monthly time frame. That's going to transition trend. It's going to push this thing lower. And so the low here, 21.55, we close at 21.32. So we're up underneath it, closed underneath it, volume expanding compared to the break. That's not good, folks. Long-term trends changing on you. Another nail in the bullish coffin. Look for a pullback tomorrow. We'll see what we got with the clues that it gives us again come tomorrow night. Have a great one. Thanks for joining me. And as always, I ask you to tell a friend, tell two. If you're doing that, if you're retweeting this, if you're doing anything to help, my appreciation to you, of course. And as always, I'm encouraging you, come look at what I'm doing. For less than $15 a month, I'll give you my trades and I'll give you a lot of education about how to read these markets just as I do it. Take care. I'll see you next time. Good night.